company. I like what I'm hearing. What would working with Edgar Allan doing a brand identity or a rebrand look like?
So yeah, it would start with that workshop. And where me or someone else on the strategy team would lead a series of exercises that kind of go through just uncovering certain aspects of the brand that maybe nobody's, formally sat down and talked about. We keep a Fig Jam file of all kinds of exercises, card sorting exercises, and note and vote exercise. I mean, it's basically just like typical workshop-y stuff, right? And I like to build the workshops differently depending on the client, because they all come with different things already thought about, already completed, already decided. And so you kind of have to start where they are. But if it were starting entirely from scratch, we would talk about sort of the what, how, and why of the brand. We would talk about its trajectory, like where it's been and where it's going. We might do a card sort that has to do with personality attributes that helps a person think of a brand as more like they would think of another human being. Is it kind? Is it exciting? Is it bold? Is it smart? Is it whatever? We would talk a lot about audience and talk about their, who are these people? What challenges them? What do they know about you already? What do they need to know that you just can't seem to get across? Kind of digging into those things. We would talk about personality sliders, like, is it somewhere on the scale of like very traditional to very kind of avant-garde? And we would have them plot kind of where they are and where they want to go. We'd talk about values. We might talk about tonal elements. But and then if we're oftentimes, just because of who we are, the first thing we're going to do after the brand is create a website. So we would often ask some fundamental questions about their digital experience as well. What do they hope to achieve? What do they have right now that's going right? I might even ask that about the brand. Like, I can see some things from the outside. You may not have a formalized brand strategy, but here's what I can kind of backwards engineer from what I'm reading, and they can say, yeah, that's pretty accurate, but there's more to us. Or they can say, oh no, all of that is crap, let's throw it out. And sometimes that happens. So, and then after that, it would result in a readout, which is I think we do brand strategy in a very specific way, or a particular way, in terms of the readout. It's very narrative. What I'll talk about next is story. It centers around a central story that you want to tell and be known for in the world. It's a story that you tell yourself inside the company, and also that is externalized to your customers. And I think those two things have to be at least related. It also goes through competitive analysis and kind of, where you're trying to own in that space, and talks about the position, and it'll talk about the vibe and voice, which we'll talk about here in a minute. I've seen a lot of brand strategy presentations. They can range from, very minimal, kind of like 3 words and a color palette, all the way to 200-page decks that have like just crap tons of data points and research. And I think that we typically work somewhere in the middle and typically skew toward the more like emotional side of branding. Like, what is the feeling we're trying to evoke? People don't buy things because of who they are. They buy things because of who they want to be. They buy things and align with things because of an aspiration. They want to move somewhere. There has to be movement laterally up and down, around, for them to want to consume something. So we try to get at what that thing is. And my favorite thing to do is in a brand strategy or in a brand deck is to like answer the question, okay, so here's what you do. You're Uber, you drive people around. You're a plumber, you unclog toilets. What do you really do? Like, that's not what you really do. If you're a plumber, you're giving somebody control back of their very expensive home, essentially. You're giving them a peace of mind that something that should just works again. So that's just a small example. And that comes together with the story as well. So that second part of brand, first was position, second is story. And so that's like that emotional hook. That's that narrative of the brand allows followers or buyers or users of its stuff to kind of be a part of. You love brands because of the story they let you be a part of, right? you buy an Adidas pair of shoes and you become part of that story because you're telegraphing that you align with whatever they're saying about themselves and whatever kind of vibe they give off. You drink a Coke because it tastes good and you're addicted to caffeine. That's what they wanted. But also because it feels friendly and like you're having a good time and you're meeting with friends, and because they have given you that feeling and have imbued everything that they do with that vibe and that story. So, this is a lot of the, it's a way that a brand comes to life. It's the start of the conversation that you're having with your audience. It is the thing that's going to be most evident, that story, on your website, in your boilerplate copy, on your print ads, on your banner ads, your big, billboards out in the world. That story should be pretty evident and pretty clear when you see all of those things, and it should be pretty consistent. So that's what we're trying to build there, is what's that mega narrative that we're telling about the brand.
Love that answer, because for anyone out there that just thinks that brand identities are just a visual thing, what you're really saying is the crux of it is a great brand is something that's not just seen but felt.
Yes, exactly.
And that is a very big difference to, maybe the client's perception of, they might come to you and say, hey, Edgar Allan, we need a brand identity. Come on, we need a logo, we need color palette. And what you're saying is, whoa, we need to get under the skin of what you're trying to achieve, what you see as yourself, then also how the audience perceives you. And maybe those two things might not be in alignment, and we need to understand that first in order to make a brand identity that really, really hits.
And it reminds me of another way that I see some brands, I don't know if they necessarily fail, but it's less enticing or less interesting than I think it should be. I'll see, it often happens in industries that don't have a lot of differentiation. They're selling a very specific service. We'll say we'll just use banking or finance or things that are a little hard to conceive of, what's the emotional kind of undercurrent? What's the real story there? Is there a story? God, we just I don't know, we try cases, or we sell ATMs, or we help wealthy people manage their money. And these are all specifically types of clients we've worked with. There is always something underneath there. And where I see some other brands fall down is that they default back to we are, the premier lender of finances to the Eastern world. And I'm like, that's not a brand. It's not a story. That is a statement of what you do. And there's nothing differentiating there. There's nothing exciting there. There's nothing that gets at why you really exist. Sometimes I'll ask that question and be like, why are you here? What's why? And they'll say, well, to make money. I'm like, okay, folks, dig a little deeper because yes, that may be why, empirically, but if there wasn't a better reason, a deeper reason, that you wouldn't the world would not allow you to exist. Things that just are there to rake in cash don't last long. They fizzle out pretty fast. So anyway, so that's another kind of pitfall I see, not thinking deep enough or not thinking human enough, more thinking again, that's shoegazing. It's we do, we have, we offer, not you get, you benefit, you will love this for whatever reason. And then the very last thing though is beyond story is it's kind of the overlay of everything and the thing that colors everything, which is just vibe. And I've rolled up vibe rolls up all of these other sort of parts of formal brand, which is voice and tone and personality. People will do archetypes sometimes, and it's a very specific way of doing branding where you'll say, well, this brand is the explorer, or this brand is the ingenue, or whatever they are. I think there are 12 of them. And I like doing that exercise sometimes because especially with companies that they have a hard time getting at sort of the emotional core of what they do, it might be kind of an interesting way to unlock that. But I don't think that brand ends there. You are not a persona, Jack. You're Jack, right? So you have specific things that are different than all the other British Jacks out there. If you were using archetypes, you would just be auburn-ish, reddish-haired British guy. Like, that would be your archetype, and that is what you are. And I am a blonde American lady. But we're also a lot more than that. So there's using just archetype to say, like, professional person of a certain age doesn't actually get at what's really real. But you want to talk about, how does that brand speak? What kind of words does it use? Is it academic and stilted and has like a really big vocabulary, and that's appropriate for your audience? And like, let's say you're a university or you're a very smart, thinky kind of like, think tank kind of place. Yes, that might be really appropriate for your audience. But if you're selling, chewing gum, and you're thinking that the best bet for your business success is to go after like, I don't know, 15-year-olds, you don't want to have that voice. So you have a very different vibe about you, which would, the vibe thing would be something that we would set down in a brand strategy in a number of different ways. Talk about personality attributes, talk about kind of like the words and phrases and the way that we speak. And that also sets the tone for visual attributes. And so this is the point at which it starts kind of being like, here's where all of that visual stuff starts coming in. You set the story, you set the vibe, you set the position, you kind of know where you live in that world. And then you can start applying those same things to visual attributes. But does the color yellow fit this better than the color orange? This is stuff that designers are great at thinking about. When I put these two shapes together, it feels very authoritarian, and that feels right for these guys. Or I like this serif font because it feels very, very formal. Things like that. So you start to use that information from the brand strategy, the vibe, the story, and the position to start build that world. And so that's another thing that I like to say is like, when I worked for the places that did like 18-month brand strategies, and they were really big and really deep and really had lots of information in them, a lot of times you get a little round of applause at the end of that presentation, and then that deck just sort of like sits there. And it's not applied very evenly or very well to the next stage, which for us, and I like it when we get to do brand all the way through build, because we can control that. We move right into building a website at that point. We move right into thinking about the color and the way it's applied on a screen, and the words that we're going to specifically use. That's the very first thing somebody's going to read about you. And we can use also all of that audience information that we're getting to path people through the website to say, okay, we can marry that big brand audience kind of like information with specifically what do you want people to get out of your website? Or you can replace website with literally any deliverable. Brochure, if anybody knows those anymore, app, television commercial, big billboard, whatever. So it's just kind of the club is open, man. Like you build the club and then you open it up and you say, okay, what's the way that it's going to attract people? What's the conversation it's going to have? How's it going to change as things change in the world?
So just to be really, really clear then, so the brand strategy stuff is position, story, and vibe. And then as
Correct.
You're doing those, you're getting a clearer and clearer idea of the visuals, but you haven't actually started the visuals until you've done these steps. And I think that's a really important thing for clients that might be watching this to understand, or potential clients who might be watching this to understand, is that it's not just visuals. Like the brand identity, I cannot stress this enough, because I have this conversation so many times in the past where it's like, I need a logo. And you're like, okay, just to be clear, that's...
Yes, and...
Yeah, exactly. But I really think that it's important to stress that brand strategy becomes before the brand identity. I mean, obviously the brand strategy influences the brand identity completely, but it's the building blocks of creating a memorable brand.
Correct. Yep. Doing all that back work is gonna, and it does nothing but benefit the person who's creating the visuals and everybody else down the line. Because you know what I hate doing? I hate guessing. Like, we don't have to guess. Like, you can do research. You can ask your audiences. You can talk to the people inside your organization. You can do a lot of thinking about what's real and what's not real and what's effective and what's good messaging and what's not good messaging. And you don't have to guess. And you can make a really good informed decision. And then in our world, because we're in the digital world, we often go out there and test that decision and then see, like, okay, how are people responding to it? Can we tweak it? Is this working better than this other thing? So again, that's another thing that's nice about digital is that things aren't like physically printed on a piece of paper. You can make 2 versions of it and say, hey, you like this or do you like this? And then you get more information every time. But hopefully you hit it pretty well the first time.
And so if someone's watching this and really, really resonating with what you're saying, Kendra, how should they approach Edgar Allan, and at what stage? Should it be, hey, we've done the brand identity, but can you now do the brand, can you actually implement this on a website? Or we don't even know where to start. Can we come to you and you just take us through the whole thing? How should people approach you?
We are equipped to take any of those people or any of those options. And I think that one thing that makes us unique as a digital agency and as Webflow agency is that we are full service in that way. You have me and my team on the front end able to take a company that literally might come and say, we have zero, we have some good thinking, but we've not put anything down on paper, lead us through this project all the way to creating an actual brand, and then, help us with the website. And we can also work with somebody who says, hey, we literally have, I think, 3 clients right now that work with another agency, that those agencies often do just brand work. And so they'll do that stuff and they'll say, okay, we have this brand work from this other agency. What can you use it to create a website? And we can say, absolutely. And I think that even in those cases, we are very well equipped to do that work because we understand the brand part. We're not just consuming it. We can look at it in a more kind of in-depth way than maybe a company that doesn't do brand. We're not just taking a book and then applying it. We're saying, okay, we understand sort of the emotional underpinnings here. We get the story. We can see where this came from. We're going to get a little more information from you. And then we're going to make sure that that is honored all the way through to the end of the website project. So the answer is we can do anything from we have nothing, we've thought about nothing, to all the way to we have a fully formed brand and we're ready to implement it. And somewhere in between, and most of the time, honestly, people are in between. They have some stuff that's thought about, or it's 10 years old. And they're like, we have a place that we're starting, but we need you to rethink it. And so that's probably the people in the middle are the ones we encounter most often. I love getting projects, though, where they're like, we've never done this. We've never thought about this. Oh, it's so exciting because you're like, oh, we get to take you on this ride now, or you get to dig into everything that you do and find meaning in it. And we're going to help you kind of really feel great about looking at your brand at the end and saying, gosh, that's us. So.
And what are the favorite projects that you particularly enjoy taking on, in terms of industries?
Oh, gosh. I have been doing this long enough that I there are not very many industries that I haven't worked in. I like all of them, honestly. I'm not going to. I will name a few that I think are particularly interesting, but honestly, I like really complicated industries, and I really kind of like the ones that are there's no story here. I'm like, oh, but there is. That's my favorite thing, to say we're a financial services company, and I don't know what we could possibly say that's any different than anybody else. I'm like, oh, we'll find it. It's in there, So digging around in those more kind of very corporate, almost kind of beige feeling industries, that's the best. I like doing the really fun ones too. We've worked with music companies. We've worked with software. I've worked in healthcare a bunch. Healthcare is a really interesting problem to solve because there's always a human element. We've worked in education, in commercial real estate, a lot in venture capital and financial institutions. And it's everything. Every time it's something new to learn, and every time it's a different story to tell. And so that for me, at least, is the favorite part of my job, is to be so when I get that sense of here's what you do, but here's what you really do, and here's what it really means,